Good afternoon. We're here again today at Clive Owen's offices in Durham for another meeting of the Shadow Monetary Policy Committee. An interesting meeting. In just 3 days' time, the Monetary Policy Committee will be sitting down and considering whether the much heralded increase in interest rates is actually going to come to fruition. So today we've got a mixture of different business people from across our patch in the North East who are going to give us their views, and at that point at the end we're going to come to our own decision, which we'll obviously pass on to Mark Carney. So Nick Pope, sitting to my left here. Nick, how are you seeing things at the moment? What do you think will come through in the rest of the week?
For us, we manufacture commercial furniture primarily to public sector, NHS, universities. So traditionally, this period now is our busiest period of the year. We kind of make our year in the next 3 months. It's going well. It's going as we hoped it would. It's an unusual business that you don't have a lot of sight of the orders that come through. So it is a bit of a barometer for what's going out there. If orders are coming through thick and fast, which they pretty much are at the moment, albeit we supply nationwide, so there's no particular skew to the northeast on that. But yeah, we're pretty confident that we're going to have a good year.
That's good. That's good optimism to start with. So we've also got Chris MacDonald. Chris, tell us a little bit about how you're seeing things at the moment.
Yeah, so the Materials Processing Institute carries out innovation projects paid for by industry, so we're very much at the sharp end of what industry's prepared to fund in terms of its future. We work in a few different geographic areas, and I think we see some differences in those areas. So for small businesses that we're supporting primarily in the Tees Valley area, we're seeing quite a lot of optimism, a lot of new starts coming forward as well, and some entrepreneurs. And the materials sector in the UK and nationally, which we support as well, that's been really quite static. It's very much linked to the fortunes of UK manufacturing. Where we've seen the biggest growth is in our international business, where we're supporting the steel sector and the mining industry internationally. This is very much mining and minerals rather than traditional coal mining. And here we're seeing very big investments, multi-billion dollar investments in new sites around the world. And that generally is a sense of real optimism from some of the big multinationals, often headquartered in the UK as well, who are investing for the future.
Good. So it's good to hear. Good to hear. There's a lot of investment around. I guess that's one of the considerations for any interest rate decision around what that investment is looking like. So good to hear more about that later on. So we've also got Catriona Lingwood. Catriona, tell a little bit about what you see at the moment.
Yeah, I work for Construction Excellence in the North East, which is an organisation which looks at the change agenda for the construction industry and the built environment. It's a mixed bag for us, I think, really, because we've got a downturn in the construction market at the moment, a lot so in the civil engineering, and that's taken a huge dip, especially in the region. I mean, obviously the bridge is now finished. So I mean, there's lots of things. I mean, we've still got the Silverlink road, which is still going on and will be going on for a lot longer. But the most of the markets are actually down, unfortunately. So it's not all rosy for us, I think, at the moment, in the whole of the sector anyway. Okay,
thank you. And Gary Ellis, this is a home game for you at Clive Owen's. So how are you seeing things at the moment?
Well, I think Katrina's comment. I think generally across our own and managed client base, I think there actually is some signs of confidence, and I would reiterate Chris's point. Really, I think some of the funding issues, I think on patch are having a bit of an issue at the moment. I think Tees Valley are very strong. The LEP in Tees Valley, in particular, seems to have got a little bit of ahead of the game as opposed to sort of the northeast LEP. And I think that's driving some of that confidence on the Tees Valley. So, we're starting to see that with some of our clients as well. But generally, I would have said confidence is pretty strong. I think some clients, particularly our engineering sector, they've had a really good 12 months. So I think there are some signs of confidence out there for our clients, which is good news.
That's good. Yeah, if we can get confidence, which tends to lead to investment, it's a good path for us to go down. Chris Dugan, welcome to this afternoon. How are you seeing things at the moment?
Mixed messages, I would say, really reflecting some of the comments that we've heard already. For our export business, we see good, strong growth. having landed a number of significant projects, and I expect that to continue for 2 or 3 years, and that's substantially helping our order book. But in the UK, certainly in the construction sector, I mirror what's been said, that we've seen a slowing down, certainly the effect of Carillion, the weather, delays on Hinckley, delays on HS2 have certainly meant that there's been some hesitancy in the level of projects being opened up. And we're seeing that at the next level down below those major infrastructure projects as well. I haven't seen any of those projects go away, apart from the retail sector, where we have seen some reduced levels of investment, for instance, Brent Cross. But I do expect that to come back towards the end of the year and early into next year and the year beyond. So UK infrastructure hesitant, certainly affecting release of orders in UK construction, but exports going extremely well.
Good. So mixed, as you say, and yes, a little bit of a theme, mixed with hopefully more confidence as we go around the table. So James Robson, how are you seeing things at the moment, James?
As representing the Entrepreneurs Forum, as its chair, we're a membership organisation with about 320 members, owner-managed businesses. Most of them are pretty optimistic, I've got to say. We're having a big drive on scale up, and the agenda involved with scaling a business up from 10 people to 50 or whatever, because as economists know, that's where you drive the growth in the economy, really, from SMEs becoming S's becoming M's, if you like. So that's encouraging. We have a big mentoring program, and so I'm pleased to say there's a lot of support out there for small businesses that are wanting to get onto that scale-up journey. I think the funding scenario, the landscape is improved, with obviously Jeremy 2 being released fairly recently for the North East LEP area. There is access to finance for appropriate businesses. Obviously Tees Valley's had its NPIF funding for about a year longer, so that's now getting quite well established. So there aren't too many reasons why a business with a good proposal, a good investment proposition can't get the funding it needs to grow. So
good.
Yeah, reasonably optimistic.
That's good to hear. Great. Okay. And Nicola Nelson, welcome this afternoon. What can you tell us about how you're finding it in the legal world?
Mixed is probably the word I'd use as well. It's been steady. The work is there, but we've noticed probably a couple of trends on the development side. There's been an awful lot of activity, promotion agreements in particular. We seem to be seeing a lot more of those now. We're obviously at an earlier stage probably than everybody else who's talked about construction, so the promotion and option agreements are usually there at the start before everybody else jumps in, so perhaps some of what we're seeing on that front might start to filter through to others. On the flip side of that, we deal with quite a lot of landlords who have retail premises, and with everything that's going on at the moment, certainly what we're seeing, they're trying to keep tenants and sometimes at whatever cost. We're seeing some significant rent cuts at the moment, but taking the view that it's better to have somebody in there than have your empty property with all that comes with that. So yeah, certainly seeing both sides of it at the moment.
Yeah, challenging time for retail. Okay, so we're sort of mixed with a layer of optimism on top. David Coates, tell us how you're feeling.
The mad world of advertising. So Newsquest Media Group, I manage Newsquest operations in the north of England, and I think echoing what you say about retail is a big part of our advertising business, and there's so much uncertainty in the retail space at the moment that a lot of our customers are saying to us they can't commit to long-term advertising commitments because of the uncertainty. There seems to be this two-tier structure in retail now. There's those that have bricks and mortar premises and therefore are, in our customers' view, overtaxed. And there are the online operators that don't have those overheads that the high street retailers saying we just can't compete any longer. We can't operate as efficiently as these guys can. So Amazon's coming in and eating their lunch. So retail is definitely under pressure. I think we are now starting to see some impact as a result of the uncertainty around Brexit in the property and motors spaces. So our customers are telling us that transaction transaction volumes are very low, both on motors and property, particularly property. And that's having a direct impact on our advertising revenue, both online and in print. Obviously, there's structural change in the regional press. People are changing the way they advertise, but we're also seeing property under pressure, online as well as in print.
You were the first person to mention Brexit.
Sorry, somebody had to.
And I'm sure we're going to be reading a lot about Brexit in your titles over the next 8 months.
Absolutely, our readers love it.
So just a little bit about the Building Society. So at Darlington Building Society, it's we're halfway through the year. Things are looking good as we move into the second half. It's fair to say that the housing market is quite static. There is actually a higher supply of mortgages than there is demand at the moment in the market, and therefore when that happens you get a pressure on your margin. And we're also going to see that in the savings market, for all you savers round the table, I predict that we'll see an increase in savings rates, nothing to do with the Bank of England, but actually the demand for savings is going to increase because some of the bigger banks and building societies will need to replace some government monies over the next few years. So watch out for a bit of a savings price war. But we're taking it in a stride and looking forward to the second half of the year. So we've got a little bit of the how we're feeling out of the way. We're now into the crunch because we've got a decision to make, folks. And I'm interested to know, first of all, what would you do in terms of Thursday's decision? The MPC will have the data. They'll then have to look forward and decide what's the best decision for our economy and for the consumer. So Nick, can I start with you? Give us a little bit about what your decision would be and just why.
Yeah, sure. Coming to this one, I think the previous meetings we've had, there was the discussion around how big an effect the beast from the east had on suppressing the economy, with I think a hope and a belief that it might have been a temporary blip with a big bounce back, and personally I've not seen that big bounce back. And then all the stuff that's been said around the table on the retail side, which has been coming out over the last few months. So I, at this stage, I think would stay at hold personally. I think and Brexit, which we talked about, is very, very volatile right now. So that would be my view, I think.
Okay, so no bounce back from the beast from the east. Anybody feeling that they've felt that bounce from that time? No.
I think a lot of the commentary at the moment seems to be suggesting that the economy is doing quite well, but that's all based on, we've had the World Cup, we've had the nice weather, we've had a number of factors, but whether or not that is a temporary blip the other way, I'm inclined to think it will be, and I'm inclined to think the same as you, that perhaps we haven't quite clawed it back to where it needs to be yet.
I think the issue with the data, you mentioned that obviously on Thursday's meeting, but I think we do see a slightly confusing picture, I think, on some of the data at the moment. You're hearing a little bit of pressure on wage inflation starting to creep in, but we're also seeing, the comments I would reiterate for our clients who are in the retail space at the minute. I think they are the clients who are really struggling a little bit. The clients who's coming to the end of its lease, that commitment going forward. For our landlords, they're having issues, as has been mentioned on the table. But I do think that data is slightly confusing in terms of inflation. Appears to have dropped back a little bit. Mm-hmm. However, that overheating, in terms of wage inflation, could come back in. So it's a pretty delicate balance, I think, between not upsetting the majority. I think that debate about savings rates, that's going to come on, because you read articles that perhaps say that there's a lot of people struggling with personal debt, and obviously personal debt is people perhaps struggling with credit card bills who are really, interest. We talk about small increase in interest rates at Bank of England rate, but personal debt tends to be very expensive debt, and I think we're not quite out of that yet. So generally, mixed data, I would have said, it doesn't make that decision easier.
I think we got data, was it just last week, from the US, 4.1% growth in the US at the moment, and they're predicting we'll get close to that soon. No? Donald Trump needs to come over and give us a kickstart then, is that?
God,
Is that
no.
no, we're not suggesting.
I think the thing is with the retail sector, I think the retail sector has completely changed over the last few years. And I think we're looking at this saying, oh, the retail sector are going through a hard time at the moment. But the retail sector has changed. Everything, a lot of things are online now. And I think you yourself will admit, you know, the way you've had to work differently now with regard to the newspaper is completely different to what you did
Absolutely.
5 years ago, never mind 10 years ago.
Completely different.
I think we've got to remember that, and I think that it's certain things we can't concentrate on certain things and say this is going to be it because this is struggling. I mean, with our things, it you know, there is lower start. There isn't the same amount of construction going forward, and I think people are reticent because they don't want to put all their money into something not knowing whether Brexit's going to have a huge effect on them or not, and I think unfortunately that still is in the back of people's minds.
Yes. Okay.
I think though when we think of the issues in retail is at the front end of this technological revolution, but this technological revolution is hitting and will hit every other sector, and Brexit's crowding that discussion out, I think, but it has the potential to have as big if not a greater impact than Brexit. So I think you're right about retail. I think this is going to hit construction as well, actually, with Industry 4 and
it
so
already
on.
has
Yeah,
in
totally
lots
there,
of
yeah.
ways through other things that impact on it. And everybody says that construction has an impact on every sector because that is what provides your houses, your offices, your places to play and enjoy yourselves. It has an effect on absolutely everything. But one of the biggest things I think, or one of the biggest worries in this region is the amount of money that's spent on civil engineering, because we have lower than anywhere else in the UK.
Yeah. And there's a number of projects that have been discussed but not actually come to the table yet to actually go forward.
It's like the duelling of the A19 up to Scotland. If I see it in my lifetime, I think it'll be a miracle.
Let's move on to Chris. Next played his cards in terms of holding interest rates at 0.5%. What do you think?
So at this meeting and at some previous meetings, I am approaching this table looking for an opportunity for a rise. That's what I'm looking for. And the reason for that is because I am increasingly concerned about the long-term ability of the bank to have room for manoeuvre around the economy. So interest rates are at a historic low. The economy might be bumbling along a bit now, but we need to get interest rates, in my view, up to a level that gives us some room for manoeuvre in terms of policy. So I'm coming to the table looking for that opportunity for a rise. That's why I voted for a rise last time. I acknowledge, though, that there are underlying issues, and one of the things that's really been puzzling me for quite some time is the fairly stagnant wage growth combined with very high levels of employment. And I've been reading some stuff recently about the difference between employment and underemployment, so people are in work but maybe not working as many hours as they want, or maybe not working at the level that they want. And so I think what I'm seeing there is a level of complexity around employment that I hadn't realised before. I actually think this is also tied to the technological revolution that we're experiencing as well. But I'm concerned about the long-term ability of the bank, I'm concerned about savers, and I'm concerned about inflation, which is now forecast to be up at 2.3, 2.4%. And I think we need to give the bank some tools to be able to manage the economy in the future. And so I am very much now in favour of a rise.
And how much would you suggest that rise should be?
Well, people have talked about half a point, but I think a quarter point will be fine for now. I think slow and steady, but indicating that this is the direction of travel, and when we can, we'll try and achieve that level of normality again, and interest rates will be very positive. But there needs to be a strong signal because business needs to plan for this as well, actually.
So slow and steady.
Yeah.
And I guess with inflation over that sort of magical 2% mark, do you still expect some letters between the Chancellor and the Bank of England for a while to come?
Well, yeah, you would expect so. I mean, even at a quarter point, you won't see an effect in that for a year. I mean, a quarter point isn't enough to get inflation down from 2.4 down to 2%. It's just we know that's not enough. But again, I feel like we need to start somewhere.
Okay. All right, Chris. Thank you. Catriona, let's have your views.
Well, I think the beginning of the year when I came to sort of a meeting, it was like, oh yeah, by sort of like May time, June time, we're going to be seeing a rise in interest rates. And I think that I still think there needs to be more confidence before we start looking at a rise. However, I totally agree with your point with regard to there is no movability with it, and possibly if it was going to be a rise, I wouldn't want to see any more than 0.25%. But at the moment, I'm very undecided on whether there should be any rise at all.
I'm not sure we can allow Catriona to be as undecided as that.
You can't abstain.
Do you like an excuse?
Can I leave now?
We will get to the end, and then you can say yes or no.
I was expecting to see a good percentage rise by the end of this year, and I don't think we're going to get a good percentage rise by the end of this year.
I think that's fair.
However, I think that it is, Chris is absolutely right, and I think he's got a lot of really good points. But it's whether this is the right time. I still am concerned over Brexit and the uncertainty that is bringing, and the more it goes on, the more worrying I think it actually is for businesses.
And do you see the Brexit hanging over the construction industry?
Absolutely.
Like
it
a bit of
hangs
a
over
shadow?
every industry,
Yeah.
I think, at the moment.
Yeah.
And I think, unfortunately, construction has a hit constantly because of it. So there you go. That's my view. I'm still undecided. I'll think.
Construction gets the name of the industry that either leads us into the boom times or leads us into the darker times. So, depending how things play out over the next 8 months, it could be a nice springboard. But
Well,
time will tell.
let's hope so.
Gary, tell me how you're thinking.
I think the point, I think it needs some big infrastructure projects, doesn't it? In this region as well. We talk about construction, it's such a wide industry, the knock-on effect down the chain to the smaller guys, to the SMEs, to the S's, to get them to be M's, is quite vital to our area. So perhaps a little bit more spending in the region would be attractive. I've moved my view a little bit, I think, as we've gone through the year. I agree with the points Chris has made earlier, and I hear Nick's concern, and that we're all slightly worried that we are on a little bit edge, but I'm with Chris on this one. Actually, I think the time we describe what we call as normal conditions. You've got to remember how long we've had this period of such. If you look back over the graphs and you see that dead line of a half, the little blip to 0.25, that we're not in normal conditions, and I think we probably do need to get back to that little bit of scope, as Chris outlined well a couple of minutes ago. So I'm with Chris on this one. I think a small increase of perhaps 0.25% would be the right time to start approaching it. If not this one, perhaps the next meeting.
Okay. So it's interesting, we're halfway around the table, and a couple of contrasts, isn't there? There's been a discussion about, have we got the data? Are we ready? Brexit hanging over the country. And what would a rate increase do to personal debt and personal debt holders? On the other side of the coin, if the Bank of England needs some room to manoeuvre and the rates are at 0.25, there's not an awful lot of places you can go with that. So do we get back into proper monetary policy? And Chris, I'm going to ask you to give your views and how you're thinking about things.
I agree with Chris's points that the bank needs instruments to be able to use in a time of need, and that time of need obviously is potentially next year with the Brexit situation. But speaking selfishly from a construction industry viewpoint, we can ill afford an increase at this time. There's too much hesitancy, too much slowing down in terms of activity from all the economic indicators that we track, and we run a traffic light system. Over 2/3 of them are amber or red, so that's either reduced activity or slower growth, or less positive indicators. So putting exports to one side, UK construction is definitely in the slow lane, and therefore can't afford to suffer a further setback, I would say, at this stage.
So you would, what decision?
I would hold.
You'd hold? Okay, Chris, understood. James, looking there for inspiration.
Despite representing, an SME community here in the region, I think because of some of the recent announcements, like public sector wage rises, because I'm a chair of governors of a school, it's now an academy, but 3.5% is a lot of money that we're going to have to find out of our £5 million payroll because at the moment there isn't any extra money coming in from the pupil roll numbers, so it's, you know, where are those savings and costs going to be taken out of the business? So I think, I think this general wage inflation at Exwell, my own chemical business, we've settled at 2.5%. Now, a bit of that's catching up because the workforce is good enough to take no wage increase back in the more difficult times for us. So we are playing a little bit of catch up there. And I suppose the government, the public sector would say the same. So that, that's a concern, and for that reason I think inflation, unless corrected by a rate rise now, and possibly another one, towards Christmas, small one, is going to start to increase. We've seen it in the cost of energy, gas, all these sorts of things which are affecting the household budgets. So I actually think that again, as Chris said, to give the Bank of England some latitude and scope, into 2019, then some small rises, perhaps in a couple of stages, over the next 6 months are appropriate. So I actually would support or vote for a 0.25% rise now, and let's see what impact it has on exchange rate. I don't think a 0.25% is going to have a massive effect, but it's it's sort of rebalancing a little bit the strength of sterling on the world market, and for savers, you said that the banks are going to start a little bit of a play for getting savers money in, which is great, if you are a saver, but obviously base rate going up a small amount would help that journey probably as well.
Okay. And SMEs, do you think SMEs will they be in the same camp? Are they having any funding challenges at the moment?
Well, as I said, funding that they're now got access to through the NPIF and the Jeremy 2 funds, I don't think the offers they'll get for their proposals, provided they're good enough, are going to be massively affected by a 0.25% rise in the Bank of England base rate, because they use such more complicated assessments of the risk and how to price their money, because they have a flexibility in the pricing models, obviously depending whether it's a low risk or a high risk investment, that a 0.25% disappears in the difference between being offered money at 6% or offered money at 10%. A 0.25% is neither here nor there really. It's in the quality of the investment proposition and how the investment committee these different fund managers sees the investment. I think that's the key thing for them.
Okay, thanks James. Nicola, what's your view?
I think at the moment, whilst there are signs of change, whilst there's signs of some confidence, I'm not convinced that there's sufficient confidence at the moment. Listening to what everybody's had to say around the table, things certainly seem to have moved on from where we were previously. There seems to be quite a lot more optimism around the table than we've had previously as well. But I think at the moment I would be inclined to say that I think a rise will be forthcoming in the not too distant future. But I think this time I would still vote hold.
Vote hold. Okay, thank you. David, we're on a bit of a knife edge here as we go around this table, David. I don't want to put any pressure on you.
I think if we were in normal times, and I don't think we are in normal times, we've had 10 years of unprecedented monetary intervention from governments all over the world, and record low interest rates for extended period of time. If we were in normal, and Brexit's just around the corner, if we were in normal times, if none of those things were happening, all of the conditions are there, I think, to justify a rate increase. So employment's strong, stock markets around the world are strong, inflation is kind of picking up a little bit, as you touched on. So you would expect, yes, absolutely, all of the circumstances are there to support an increase, but we're not in normal times. With Brexit just around the corner, the only justification that I can see for increasing rates, which has kind of been hinted at around the table, is so that if Brexit goes badly wrong, we can cut them later. So increase now. If Brexit goes belly up, then there's some scope to do something in response to that. But that's the only justification that I can see at the moment. So put my cards on the table, I would vote to hold rates, not increase them at the moment.
Okay. Hold them at 0.5%. Okay, so we're round the table. I think the chairman will just just hold his tongue for a moment or two, because we may have a bit of a knife edge in this vote. Why don't we take a vote and see where the cards will fall? So I think we've heard that we're not in bullish territory. There's concern about the delicate state of the UK economy and a number of sectors within it. But we have heard a case made for a 0.25% increase. So can I ask the committee to raise your hands if you vote in favour of that increase? Okay, it looks as if our floating voter has made their mind up. So three are in favour of that increase, and can I have a vote for the people who are against and would like to hold for now? And we have 5 who would vote in that way. Just for the record, this hand was coming up for a 0.25% increase. The argument was very well made about why, and the only other thing I would throw in, because I'm acutely aware of personal debt and mortgage debt, I hope that the banks and building societies have got a lot better at stressing those situations so that it is affordable to those borrowers if interest rates were to rise. So I was sort of thinking that the negative impact of that rate rise at this point would be cushioned, and some of the data was pointing towards an increase. But I think it would be fair to say that around the table there was very much a mixed view on the economy, on the next 8 months. The Brexit word is hanging above us, and therefore a really understandable decision to hold interest rates. Was anybody in favour of increasing quantitative easing that is happening at the moment in the market? The government or the Bank of England pumping any more money in? Do we think we're in that sort of...
I think not at the moment.
No.
I wouldn't be in favour of that at the moment, because if we do get a bad deal out of what happens with Brexit, then that might be a lever that needs to be pulled at some point. I wouldn't be pulling it now.
It looks like a...
Agreed.
I was going to say, one thing I think is interesting from the discussion around the table today is, for those people who were here last time, is I think the outlook seems more pessimistic. So the vote was the same, I think pretty much the same last time. There was sort of 4 or 5 or something to rise, but it slightly feels to me from the discussion today as if the moment's maybe passing. You can sort of see it slightly slipping away. And we were here once before, maybe a year or so ago as well, where again there was an opportunity for a rise, and we weren't confident, the bank wasn't confident enough either, and it slipped. I just wonder now if when we convene again, if actually we'll kind of feel as though that could have been the moment and it wasn't, and now it's gone. And for the long-term outlook, I think that's a concern.
Well, the clock will be ticking closer to the deadline next year, so that'll be interesting.
I think one of the things that's come out in the last 3 or 4 months, and who knows whether this will pan out or not though, on the Brexit side, is when you've got Airbus, Jaguar Land Rover, Nissan all saying, depending on what happens with the deal, depends on whether they start to look into Europe. They're quite sort of scary statements. Who knows whether it'll pan out or not, but I think businesses hate uncertainty, and if they're that degree of uncertainty, they'll hold back.
I think that's a good phrase to end. Businesses hate uncertainty. I'm sure we could all agree with that. So the Shadow Monetary Policy Committee in the North East of England has spoken, and it's spoken that we should hold interest rates at 0.5%. Now all eyes to London on Thursday, to Mark Carney and the team, and we'll all look with interest to see if they follow the lead of the North East Shadow Monetary Committee. Thank you very much.